So we move straight now to our guest, clinical psychologist Victoria Siewnarine-Geelalsingh. Let's just read something from the reason why we asked somebody like her to come on and help us understand this. Embrace life and be strong. 2 weeks before she was found dead on a beach in Annis Vale, Tobago, model and actress Vanna Giro compiled her thoughts on life, death, love, and spirituality in an 87-page motivational book she said was her gift to the world. She was 30. She sent the document on January 12th via email to a list of friends, saying she hoped it, quote, brings you as much realization about life as it has for me, unquote. Here's some of what she says. When you find yourself in a low, energetic funk, firmly plant your feet into the ground, stand up, shoulders back, and remember that miracles and amazing things happen because you exist. A person can have the world on their shoulders and you wouldn't know it, because we teach ourselves to hide and keep the truth hidden from those who are taught ostracism as a result of not conforming. She goes on like that to make these sort of inspirational statements. The question, from me at least, and we're happy that Ms. Siewnarine-Geelalsingh has agreed to try and help us understand this. Somebody who will write that, is that a candidate for the suggestion that she may have taken her own life? Good morning, Ms. Geelalsingh. Ms. Siewnarine-Geelalsingh, good morning.
Victoria.
All right, okay.
So I think, I don't think that that's an assumption that we can make, simply because suicidality is extremely complex. But when I read this article, one of the things that I thought about was the time and place that she would have been in when she wrote it, and how she would have experienced the loss of a loved one, something extremely difficult. And during the process of grief, you tend to do a lot of reflection. Journaling is a psychological tool that is used quite often, and it may have been that in her grief, in her probably researching how to cope in these kinds of things, she might have just decided to put pen to paper, and these are the things that flow. So the excerpts from it that I have read, it sounds very strong, very motivational indeed, quite a definitive sort of a self-talk that says, I am going to do this, things are hard right now, I am going to dig my heels into the ground, I am going to be firm. One of the things that you read just now was her alluding to the fact that when things are hard, we need to hide it from the world. And that is an unfortunate reality for all mental distress that many of us face, because we grow up thinking that we need to put on a strong front, and that a strong front means not appearing to be vulnerable, when in truth and in fact, it takes courage to express our vulnerability. So I think in her putting pen to paper, writing this, expressing her emotions, expressing how much she would want, and saying that it's a gift to the world, because in this state that she was in, she was in a state of grief, right? In this state that she was in, it probably was like an aha moment to her that, hey, I can do these things. If I just maintain positive self-talk, I could try not to hide from myself the fact that I'm grieving, but to determine within myself that this is a moment and that this moment will pass.
Yeah, but let me thank you very much for agreeing to have this discussion, because a lot of your colleagues, well-meaning as I know a lot of them to be, didn't want to step onto the ground with this at all, because to be having this discussion, some people say that you take the position that she took her own life, and a lot of people did not want to go there, to even speculate about it. So I think it's courageous on your part to even attempt to put it in perspective, and we're happy that you're going to do it. Because one of the things look at in what she's saying here, and then look at what has been said about her, those people who didn't know her, but it's not uncommon that somebody will have everything going for them. She was an actress, she was a model, she was beautiful, everything going for her from people looking on the outside, and people say, but we've had cases where precisely what we see on the outside and everything that people have does not satisfy other things about them. And we've had situations like these that, such people are no exceptions in terms of what they do with their own lives. So that is something that we can talk about as well. Everything seems to be going for you, but yet there's something missing deeply.
Right. So for many of us, when there are so many things going on in our lives and it's positive, those are external reinforcements. But then we still also have the internal self to deal with. And our internal self, when we look at that, we think about what is our self-worth, what is our self-concept. If you strip away all of the external things from us, do we still positively regard ourselves? So certainly someone can have the appearance of having it all together, but then what is their perception of how they are valued? In terms of labeling a situation as something that probably fell in courtyard of being suicidality, I would say that there is no way for us to know. I would say that we can't say, given what we know. It's just the situation is just too ambiguous in this regard. Yes, she may have been experiencing mental distress, but as I mentioned before, think about where she was. A bit of distress or some difficulty coping or outbursts and things like that is appropriate for the situation that she was in, which we're saying is a situation of grief. Now, while she may have experienced some depressive symptoms before, or some other things that I read were reported about her, we can say that a typical person also experiences depression at some point or another, certain symptoms. So we can have things looking packed and packaged on the outside and be in a mess internally. That is absolutely true, but it doesn't mean that we're at the point where we consider suicide, because coping is something that is real, and coping is something that we can all do. Adaptive coping. Now, many of us engage in maladaptive coping mechanisms. So we think about things like substance abuse and all of that, risk-taking behavior. Those things would be considered maladaptive or unhealthy. But even though there's distress internally, there are things that you can do to cope. And one of the things that she would have rightfully done, now of course I'm making an assumption that she was experiencing mental distress and just taking her life as it was reported by others, right? But one of the things that she would have done during this period was to produce this motivational book. So when we look at that, we can say, even though she said it was a gift to the world, it doesn't have to mean that she was thinking in a finite way that she wouldn't be here anymore, so she's leaving this world. It could be interpreted as I mentioned before, she had an aha moment. She said, yes, this is really useful. These are realizations that people, if people would get this and if people would rehearse this to themselves, then they would be able to be better internally.
Right. Here's something she said again. Here's something she said again in the piece. The truth is that everything lasts forever as long as you want it to exist lasting. You feel it in your heart. Once you've loved a person, place, or thing, it never dies because energy never dies. There's no end. And then she goes on to say, death is but a door, a short step from one's destination to another. When you have given your time in a way that makes you and the other person feel something, there is never loss when one or the other has to leave this plane of existence. You have created magic and energy for a moment in time. You can always return to using the same magic. We lose people, things, and memories, not because we are meant to experience loss, but because we are made to remember that that time is the substance we are made of, and we must use this time not to dwell on our losses, but to abandon all old thoughts and look forward to new days, new experiences, and the ability to always start from scratch. Is there a clue anywhere in there?
I think that's absolutely beautiful, what you just read, even the way you read it. And I think it speaks about an eternal relationship between someone and someone that they've lost. Because even though we lose people, we hold on to them as part of their legacy. Because having an experience with someone or living with someone, interacting with them in any way, shape, or form, will always affect us because we will always ever be changed for having the experiences that we did have. So saying that sounds to me like a reflection, or it sounds to me like something she's saying to herself, like, even though you're gone, even though I don't have you anymore, there's really no sense of loss. And death is the door, because yes, it is something that the body passes through, but it doesn't mean that, you're no longer with me. And as I said, there is absolutely no way, and there shouldn't be any speculation about suicidality here, because the situation is all too ambiguous for us to know. But it sounds like what you just read, it sounds like she's found a way to cope healthily with loss, where she's saying, okay, you've gone, I'm accepting that, excuse me, I'm accepting that, there is a loss, but I have found a way to keep you with me. And I believe, when you mentioned magic, I think that's probably what she was alluding to, that in itself is a sense of magic, that someone could not be here, but you can still have them with you. And another thing you read is that, you start anew every day, which reads to me as hope. It reads to me as there is a possibility for future building. And if you look at suicidality, the biggest thing, or the thread that runs through every single suicidal type of situation or ideation or anything like that, is a sense of hopelessness. So what you just read, that single line, and I'm sure there are many others, and there are many others, because I have read some of the other manuscripts too, you would see that there is that glimmer of hope, or there is that idea of there's a future moving, or forward moving, or digging your heels in, and those kinds of things. So suicidality is defined by hopelessness, but in this you're seeing a lot of hope.
Even in the way, sort of like this would have been, it turns out that this was her exit statement.
It turns out that it was the last thing that she wrote. But again, now I am not what is the term? I can't even remember the term. But I am not someone who, could look at a crime scene and determine what were the factors for or against, and, all the evidence and those kinds of things. But in terms of the information that I do have mentally, I am not of this strong opinion that Vanna went to that beach or left home with the intention of completing this act. However, as I said, there is too much ambiguity in this situation for us to determine otherwise.
Yeah.
There are just many things about it to me that says to me that this was probably accidental, or that something happened. I know in the autopsy they reported that there was foul play. But there are certain things like folding your clothes before you go in. They're just acts that are incongruent with saying that definitively she intended to complete the act.
Yeah. All right, Victoria Siewnarine-Geelalsingh, thank you very much for talking with us on this.